Welcome back to the CQ certification and training on the SimplyHosted and premise Nimbus phone system. In our last training, we took a look at just some basic system settings that you do regarding your network, public IP, local IP scheme. We talked about setting up extensions, PJSIP. One thing I did not mention with the PJSIPs that I should have, that I'm going to pop back to real quick. If we go to one of our PJSIP extensions, one of the benefits of having a PJSIP is that you can have multiple endpoints, 3 or 4 devices with the same extension, mobile app, desk phone, call panel, desktop app. In order to do that, you do need to make a small change to the phone system. If you go to the Advanced tab for PJSIP and scroll down, you'll see this right here, Max Contacts. And default is 1, which means 1 device per extension. But you can change that to something larger, 5, 10. Then the system will expect or will be okay with having multiple devices for the same extension. Now, if you're using the mobile app, which we'll talk about later, the Clearly Anywhere mobile app or the Clearly Anywhere desktop app, it will automatically change this for you. You don't have to change this manually. But if you are just doing multiple desk phones with the same extension, you will need to come in here, change your max context, submit it, and apply it. So I wanted to touch base on that. All right, so we've taken a look at creating extensions and settings that I mentioned. I want to talk about how can we get phone calls in and out of our phone system. So all of this is reliant on SIP trunks. If we go to trunks right here, we'll see that it's empty. If you're using third-party trunks, then it would be up to your provider to give information on what this should look like. So for example, if we add a trunk, you can add a PJSIP, a SIP trunk. For a long time, people use SIP trunks. And then there's a variety of settings that go here in peer details, trunk name, user details, register string. And there's just a lot of SIP carriers out there, and all of these are going to be different based on what carrier you use. So if you are using your own third party, it's up to your third party to provide documentation on what goes for these, what goes in these locations. Now, some of this is you can get some information. We do in our wiki have some known configurations for SIP trunk carriers. If you're using an IP authentication or if you're using a digest, that'll change your username, password, all of that can be found in the wiki. If you are using CQ's SIP, this will all be filled out completely for you. You won't have to worry about programming this. Trunks will be programmed, usernames, passwords, everything. We actually use PJSIP trunks now, so you won't have to do that. So first of all, create your trunk. If it's a CQ trunk, actually that step is done for you. We will handle that. If you are using your own third party, maybe the customer is already in a contract, you're going to go ahead and need to program this. You can use our wiki. There is some information there as well. So once you've completed your trunk, I'm just going to do a sample here. I'm going to, because I want to show you how this works. So let's just say you're using CQ trunks, the Clearly Anywhere. They're going to be PJSIP. We just give it a name. I'm just going to fill this in because I want to be able to show you what this looks like. Okay, so in the end you'll have something that looks like this. It'll be filled with the proper information, whether you get it from the wiki or your provider, or we take care of it for you if you're using the Clearly or the CQ trunks. So that's going to be step 1 with your trunks. One thing you can do is you can check to see if your trunks are registered, to see if they're online. Let me show you what this would look like. I'll hop into a system here. Under reports, you can click on asterisk info, and then you can click on registries. Now in this case, this is only going to show if you're using digest trunks. In this case, we're not using digest trunks. You'll see them registered here. But under peers, if you're doing trunks, you'll see them you'll see them here under chance SIP, along with status of OK or unmonitored. So that's where you'd see your trunks. If you're doing registries, you can click on that and you'd see them there as well. So set up your trunks. Like I said, it's hard to go into details because there's just so many of them out there. I could, if we take a look at, let me show you an example here of what this would look like if you're using the CQ trunks. No, it's done for you. So if you are using, so under reports, click on asterisk info and then click on registries, and you'll see something that looks like this. So this is only going to populate if you're using digest trunks. Digest trunks meaning that there's a username and a password. So that's up to you, your carrier, if you're not using the CQ trunks. In this case, these are the Clearly trunks that we use. There's 4 of them. You can see they're registered, meaning that we have the right username, we have the right password, and they can access the server. So you can check to see if your trunks are registered. If your trunks are digest and they show not registered or something other than registered, then your registration is not working, and you should contact your carrier to see what's going on there. So number 1, create your SIP trunks. Number 2, let's talk about outbound calling. To call out, you need an outbound route. So under connectivity, click on outbound route. It'll be blank. Go ahead and add an outbound route. You can call it whatever you want. The name does not affect anything. If you're using the Clearly trunks, this will be made for you. A lot of it's automated. Route CID, this is the phone number that you're going to pulse out. So this should be the phone number of the business. And then a lot of this does not get changed, but trunk sequence, you do need to select the trunks that you are using. So select the trunk that you programmed. If it's Clearly trunks, this whole thing will be made for you. So give it a name. This is important. Make sure it's the main business phone number. And then choose your trunks. And then click on dial patterns. If I'm doing this personally, I click the wizard. I select 7, 10, 11. I actually don't do emergency, and I do toll free. And I hit generate routes, and it creates all this for me. So this is 7 digits. And then prepend means the system will add that for you. So if a customer is dialing locally 7 digits and you want them to add the local area code, you can put that there. So if your area code is 989, you can put it, or 765. Some dealers don't even allow their customers to dial 7 digits. They make them dial 10 or 11. So there's 10-digit dialing. There's 11-digit dialing. There's your 800 phone numbers. All right, so all of those are. If you ever want to get rid of these, you simply hit the trash can over here. So if you do want to do 7-digit dialing, you can leave that there and then put the area code here. So if a customer dials 7 digits, it will then add 765 for you. So we'll hit submit. So this is going to allow the customer to dial out 7-digit, 10-digit, 11 digits. I do like to add a separate emergency route. So 911. I typically don't like to merge these together. This is where you want to make sure you have the correct address associated with your number. And in this case, you can select emergency. If we look over here, emergency, this just means it's going to take the extension's emergency phone number. So each extension can have its own emergency phone number. We do want to select our SIP trunk. And then for dial patterns, if we do a wizard here, we just want to get rid of all of those, just the emergency. And there you go. You have the 911, the 933 is if for testing purposes. So we can go ahead. And the other thing you probably want to take a look at is notifications. One thing that you do need to do for emergency phone calls is you do need to provide notifications to customers. In this case, you can do it a couple different ways. You can do a page group. So you can create a group of phones so that if this route is used, if 911 is called, the system will page phones, or it can send an email saying, hey, this user called 911 at this time. So you do need to provide some form of notification to the customer. That was in a recent, the carries law, that the customer just needs to know that someone on their premise called 911. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this. Right, so now we have, I like to always put emergency first, so you can click and drag these. As I said, if you're using the Clearly trunks, these will be made for you. If you're not, you'll need to make these. Be sure you select your trunks and set your outbound calling plans. Okay, so at this point, you've got trunks registered. You've got outbound calling working, both emergency and local and long distance. Not long distance really isn't a thing anymore, but outbound calling, you've got that all set up. At this point, we just need to worry about inbound calling. For inbound calling, that is an inbound route. So an inbound route, think of it as your DID. So you need to have, for the most part, an inbound route for every DID. So if you've got 3 DIDs, you need 3 separate inbound routes. They can all go to the same place. You don't have to route them different places, but they do need to be made. So give it a name. So we'll just call this main number. You give it a DID phone number. So DID number, this is the act. What is the phone number? Right, so there's your DID. Leave your caller ID number blank. That's actually a way to limit phone calls. So don't put anything in there. And then for destination, you can just choose where do you want this to go. And we're going to get more into details for this later. There's a lot of different options, whether it's going directly to an extension, a voicemail, auto attendant, how do you factor in holidays, how do you factor in open and closed hours. That's all going to be on choosing the correct destination here. Let's just say for now, I'm going to choose extension, and we're going to set this right to, go to me. So it's in some ways it's like a direct phone number that will not hear any messages. It's just going to ring my phone. This is an interesting one, CID name prefix. For every DID, you can assign it a certain name prefix. So when this number is called on my phone, it would say sales dash and then the phone number for the person calling. So that can be helpful if you're running multiple organizations, that you can add a name prefix here. So we'll go ahead and delete that. But that right there is really all you need to do for inbound calls. In most inbound are 10 digits. If you find it's not working, go ahead and try 11 digits. I see that every so often where your carrier is sending 11 digits, and so then if you only have 10, it won't accept it. So just a little troubleshooting there. Be sure you leave caller ID number blank, and then just choose a destination, and voila, you've got inbound calls. And as I mentioned, you want to create an inbound route for every DID on your phone system. If you're doing faxing and the faxing is going to eFax or fax adapter, they don't need to be in here. This is just phone calls that are coming from your system. So that covers your traffic. Whether it's step 1, set up your trunks. If it's Clearly IP, if it's CQ trunks, this is done for you. If it's not, set up your own. In our wiki at the very bottom, there are some setups for various SIP trunk carriers in the United States. At that point, go to your outbound route. This is also done for you with Clearly trunks, if you're using our trunks. If it's not, create 2, 1 emergency, 1 main outbound, and then from there, create your inbound routes. That's your DIDs. Create 1 for every DID, and then give it a destination. Moving forward, we will take a look at the more in-depth aspects of the phone system, how to get a phone. We haven't really talked about how to get a phone registered. How can you get real quick, how can I get a phone registered to the system? And then we'll take a look into holidays and time groups and business hours and messages and all that sort of stuff. But for now, that wraps up our setup on the CQ SimplyHosted and the Nimbus premise system.